Did a disgruntled Los Angeles Uber driver start the deadly fire that consumed the Pacific Palisades last year because he was angry at the rich and famous? Or was he simply in the wrong place at the wrong time? That's the jury. That's the question a Los Angeles jury is weighing after a 3-week-long trial. Now, arson cases are notoriously hard to prove, even if the science itself has evolved. And this case is largely circumstantial. Prosecutors have leaned heavily into painting 30-year-old Jonathan Rinderknecht as an angry, unstable loner, hell-bent on revenge against wealthy elites, a man investigators say idolized Luigi Mangione. Prosecutors say it was New Year's Day and an Uber fare led Rinderknecht to the Pacific Palisades, and that is where authorities argue he started a brush fire with his Bic lighter and then made several calls to 911 to report it. Rinderknecht denied setting that fire, despite witnesses, surveillance video, cell phone data, and detailed ATF analysis that put him just feet from where the fire began. Now, that fire was the Lockman fire. Firefighters put out those flames, but embers from the Lockman fire continued to smolder underground for 6 days, eventually erupting into the Palisades Fire. And the Palisades Fire killed 12 people, including an 85-year-old who didn't want to abandon her pets, a former child actor who was blind and had cerebral palsy, a former NASA engineer, and so many more. Certainly not the billionaires Rinderknecht was allegedly targeting. Defense lawyers argue there is no physical proof that their client started the fire, no videos of him doing so, no eyewitnesses. Instead, his attorneys called witnesses who say they saw a group of teenagers in the area and heard bangs that sounded a lot like fireworks. It's those fireworks, the defense argues, that actually ignited the flames. They also argue crucial evidence was simply left to burn away. Defense attorneys spoke moments ago, just after the jury wrapped up its first day of deliberations.
I've been doing this for 25 years. You don't want to read into too much of anything, but obviously they're giving strong consideration to the government's case, and that's always a good sign for the defense. He's doing great. Spirits are high. Spent some time with him today while he was locked up, and he's doing well. He's encouraged, I think, as well.
Rinderknecht is facing 45 years in prison if he's found guilty of 3 arson charges. For more on the case, let's bring in former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani and criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool. Both of them are Los Angeles area attorneys impacted by the Palisades fire. Neama, this is such a circumstantial case. There's no video of him doing this. There's no witness testimony. It's just that he happened to be right there at the very moment the Lockman fire began.
Well, Elizabeth, I think it's that and more. Obviously, he is obsessed with fire. He's ranting and, waging this war against the rich. And even though he called 911, and it's something the defense argued that he was trying to stop this fire, he's videotaping the firefighters. And importantly, he lied about his location to law enforcement and police officers. So again, I think there is evidence that he started that January 1st Lockman fire. I think what the jurors are probably grappling with is 6 days later, that devastating January 7th fire and the causation. I think if it were up to the defense, we would hear evidence of LAFD's negligence. The judge excluded all that evidence, saying, you know what, that's reasonably foreseeable that firefighters wouldn't put out that fire, and you're going to be responsible for any effects, even if it rekindled days later. So I think even if he's convicted, the defense does have a pretty good argument on appeal, as well as some of the character assassination, the Uber passengers calling him an incel and the like.
Brian, you are the defense attorney here. That has always been, he's charged with arson, but the fire that did all the damage and killed all the people and burned down all the homes wasn't the actual fire that he's accused of starting. That was 6 days later.
Yeah, Elizabeth, but let me tell you one thing. I think it was a catastrophic error on the judge's part to not allow evidence of causation here. We talked about this before. I mean, in California, you can't prove a case unless the act of a defendant is a, quote, substantial factor in bringing about the harm. And there were intervening factors here that I think defeated causation. And one of those we talked about a while ago was a phone call by a firefighter the later in the morning on January 1, where he's calling the chief battalion and saying, hey, I don't think this fire's out. We should put it out. And the battalion chief says, no, you mean to tell me that shouldn't come into evidence? So that's the first point. That's reversal error. And then let's get back to whether the defendant caused the fire. His best evidence in the case was a former LA County detective who categorically said there's no evidence of arson here and there's no videotape of him starting the fire. And as you alluded to, the evidence was crushed, burned, floated away in the water. So that is powerful evidence, I believe, to defeat and create reasonable doubt in favor of the defendant.
Neama, why would a defendant set a fire and then call 911 and then hang around and watch as the firefighters fight it? Is that a typical firebug behavior? What is that?
Well, if you're a pyromaniac and you're obsessed with fires and you're listening to rap songs about fires and you threaten to...
All of which we know from evidence he did, that he was painting a lot, drawing a lot, listening to music. It was some weird stuff he was doing.
Yeah, it's all on ChatGPT. He's threatened to burn down family members' house. So there's a lot of evidence that this guy has a fascination with fire. He's not your typical guy. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily make you guilty, but jurors are going to consider that when they're deciding, hey, did this guy light the fire? And look, maybe there's no video evidence of him doing it, but there's a Bic lighter in his glove compartment as well. And most people, again, they don't drive back into the fire, film the firefighters, right, and start asking ChatGPT questions saying, hey, you know, if I just call about a fire, is there any risk that, am I responsible for it, right? So he's trying to create a record. I mean, jurors aren't stupid. Again, I always think, and Brian alluded to this, the defense's best argument was always, look, he started the January 1st fire. That doesn't mean he should be responsible for the January 7th. But the judge really took out that argument with some of those pretrial rulings. So the defense really had to go all or nothing and say, you know what, he didn't cause any of this.
All right. Neama Rahmani, Brian Claypool, thank you both so much as we watch what the jury does in this case. We will stay tuned. We'll see what the verdict is.
Elizabeth.
I really appreciate it.